Welcome to The Explainer. I am so excited to share today's topic with you because it completely flips conventional wisdom right on its head. Right now, target sites are getting more and more aggressive with bot protection, and because of that, proxy budgets are absolutely skyrocketing for anyone doing serious data extraction at scale. So today, we're going to look at the counterintuitive truth about scaling that data collection by utilizing unmetered proxies. If you've ever been involved in scraping data or managing automated web requests, you probably think a lower success rate is inherently a bad thing. Well, as we're going to see from the source material today, that is actually not always the case. By the end of this, you might just rethink your entire infrastructure budget.
Okay, let's dive right into our roadmap for today. We're looking at the unmetered proxy paradox, flat versus variable costs, smart automation for success, metrics that actually matter, and finally, trade-offs to consider.
All right, part one, the unmetered proxy paradox. Let's just go ahead and address the elephant in the room, the core tension of the proxy industry.
When we evaluate infrastructure, we're usually looking at two totally distinct models. First up, you've got your premium metered proxies. These are the pristine, highly reliable IPs. They give you a really high single request success rate because you're often paying for premium residential routing, but you're paying a variable cost per gigabyte or per request. On the flip side, we have unmetered proxies. Now, these usually rely on shared pools with way higher churn, meaning they might hit temporary blocks or CAPTCHAs a lot more often. Because of that, they naturally have a lower single request success rate. But, and this is the kicker, they come with a fixed, flat monthly cost.
Which brings us to a pretty fascinating question. Why on earth would you pay for lower reliability? I mean, why would serious automation experts deliberately buy proxies with a lower per-request success rate? At first glance, it just looks completely backwards, right? Usually in engineering, we're striving for near-perfect reliability on every single execution. But here, there is a very deliberate logic behind actually accepting failure.
Moving to part two, flat versus variable costs. To really answer that question, we have to completely shift our perspective away from technical reliability and look at pure economics.
Take a look at this quote from the source material. The marginal cost of retries is essentially zero. Think of it like a buffet versus an a la carte menu. With a metered a la carte proxy, literally every single request costs you money. So hitting an HTTP 403 error, that is literally money down the drain. But with an unmetered flat fee, you've already paid for access to the buffet. If you hit a 403, it's just a free data point telling you, hey, try another IP. Grabbing another one and trying again costs you absolutely nothing extra.
So the key metric here becomes your cost per successful data point. This is the true measure of your ROI. You calculate it by just dividing your flat monthly cost by your total successful responses. Say you're paying a $100 flat fee. Whether it takes you 10,000 attempts or 50,000 attempts to get 10,000 successful data pulls, your cost is capped at exactly $100. Notice what's missing there? We are completely ignoring the number of failed attempts because those failures didn't incur any extra bandwidth fees at all.
Simply put, success rate per attempt does not equal success rate per dollar. And this is the real paradigm shift. Unmetered pricing essentially converts your access into a flat, throughput-focused economy. You're basically buying the opportunity to try as many times as you want, instead of paying a premium for guaranteed success on every single try. Once you realize the math heavily favors volume over individual perfection, the whole strategy just kind of clicks into place.
All right, part three, smart automation for success. Now, what if your automation actually expects to fail? Obviously, you can't just blindly spam a target server. Let's look at the engineering secret sauce required here.
To make this work, we deliberately build for failure using three core steps. Step one is fast failure detection. You've got to use short, 6 to 12 second timeouts and fail fast on obvious blocks like HTTP 403s. Why that specific window? Well, 6 to 12 seconds is long enough to let a normal response come through from a healthy proxy, but it's short enough that you aren't wasting precious processing time waiting on some hanging connection. Step 2 is exponential backoff, and Step 3 is immediately parallelizing your retries on brand new IPs from your pool.
Let's make sure we deeply understand Step 2, though, because it is absolutely vital. Exponential backoff plus jitter. Basically, when you detect rate limit, you wait progressively longer between your retries, but crucially, you add random time delays. For example, instead of waiting exactly 5 seconds every time, you wait 5 seconds plus a random jitter of maybe 1 to 3 seconds. This perfectly mimics organic human-like behavior. Adding that randomness is exactly what prevents your automated system from creating this massive synchronized wave of requests that thrashes the target server and gets your entire IP pool permanently banned.
All of this builds into a really robust, living system. You want to use large, diverse IP pools so you aren't just hitting the same dead ends over and over again. You've got to track IP health, keeping simple metrics per IP so you can proactively drop the bad exits. You also really need adaptive concurrency, meaning dynamically scale up your worker threads when your success rate is high and automatically throttle them down when blocks start increasing. And finally, if a target site actively correlates an IP to a specific device fingerprint, you have to maintain session consistency across your retries to reduce detection.
Moving on to part 4, metrics that actually matter. Because obviously, to prove this counterintuitive strategy is actually working for you, we need to know exactly what to measure.
You really need a dashboard that tracks specific metrics per job and per target. This means monitoring the requests issued, your successful responses, the average attempts it takes per success, and the latency per attempt. Now, latency is particularly important to watch here, because unusually high latency might actually be an early indicator of a burned IP pool, way before you even start seeing hard 403 errors. Then, you factor in your flat monthly cost to find your estimated cost per success. You just have to ensure this metric is actually lower than the equivalent metered gigabyte cost to guarantee you're getting a mathematical win. And finally, part 5, trade-offs to consider. Let's bring this all back down to earth for a second. Because while this is incredibly powerful, unmetered proxies are not some magic bullet for every single scraping scenario.
When we weigh our options, the contrast in use cases is pretty stark. Unmetered is absolutely perfect when you've got high volume, your system easily tolerates retries, and you can scale horizontally. But looking at the other side of the coin, some projects require absolute perfection on the very first try, like in high-frequency financial trading. Or think about strict request ordering. If you're automating a multi-step checkout process that needs the exact same IP address to carry a session from start to finish, the high churn rate of an unmetered pool is going to ruin that sequence. For those specific cases, you really should stick to metered.
Also, operating at this massive scale requires adhering to some strict operational constraints. You should always design your scrapers to respect robots.txt and any legal constraints around the data you're pulling. It's just standard practice to enforce rate limits within your own code so you don't overwhelm those target servers. On top of that, you must constantly monitor for abuse signals. This means actively watching for honeypot traps or sudden global bans and making sure your system architecture is smart enough to quickly back off and pause when those specific signals spike.
So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. Take a look at your own systems right now. Is your scraping architecture designed for perfection, or is it designed for scale? Because as we've seen today, optimizing for throughput and intelligent retries rather than single request perfection can completely revolutionize your data collection budget. It definitely takes a bit more engineering upfront to handle those failures gracefully, but man, the economic payoff is massive. Think about how you might apply this paradigm shift to your own projects. Thanks for joining me for this explainer today, and keep learning.